Hello, I'm Rajesh Merchandani, and thanks for joining me for this edition of the CGD podcast. Today, how did Brazil do it? What am I talking about? Well, how did Brazil manage to reverse damaging trends and undo powerful vested interests to cut its deforestation rate in the Amazon? I don't just mean by a small amount. Brazil cut the deforestation rate by 80% in 1 decade. It's now the largest reducer of greenhouse gas emissions. Not only that, it also managed at the same time to increase development outcomes and also increase agricultural production. To learn more about this, I'm joined by Juliana Santiago, who heads the Amazon Fund Department of Brazil's National Development Bank, BNDES. Now, the Amazon Fund, in case you don't know, provides financial support to combat deforestation, and BNDES is responsible for raising and investing funds and for monitoring and reporting on projects that the fund supports. Juliana, great to have you on the podcast. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Before we get to the point of how you did it, let's understand the scale of the problem that Brazil was facing. How big a problem has deforestation traditionally been in Brazil?
The National Institute of Space Research in Brazil has been monitoring the deforestation rates since the 80s. And in 2004, we have reached the highest deforestation rate ever. So by that time, the government has joined efforts, and all ministries had engaged in not only identify the problem and the main deforestation drivers, but to put in place a national strategy policy that would focus on combating deforestation. So,
what were those main deforestation drivers?
There are so many drivers of it, but basically the policy responds to that, because the policy has 3 main axes: land and territory use, illegal actions of deforestation has to be controlled, and the third action is the stimulation of production activities in the Amazon. So giving alternatives to the people that live in the forest and from the forest, other than doing illegal actions, is also an important factor of combating deforestation.
So land title, illegal actions, and then also giving people an alternative use for the land, making them see that the trees are worth more alive than dead.
Exactly.
Why is this a development problem as opposed to just a climate problem?
We identified that our economy was also dependent of the maintenance of the forest. So the forest is important to keep the watersheds, to keep the humidity and the rain flows, not only to Brazil, but also to the world. So this understanding, and having even the rural owners understanding that deforestation might be a threat to the business, was part of this engagement in protecting the forest and thinking about sustainable development to the country.
You know, Brazil introduced a lot of policies domestically to protect the Amazon, but you also had international support from Norway. There was a deal of $1 billion which Norway provided for payment for performance in reducing deforestation. And at CGD, we talk a lot about payment for performance. We call it cash on delivery aid. But how much of a difference did that Norwegian money make? Because Brazil was already doing deforestation reduction. How much of a difference did the Norwegian money make?
Yes. In 2006, Brazil governments brought to the Conference of Parties the concept of the Amazon Fund. So the concept was really based on the performance payment, which means that Brazil was proposing to the world that based on its efforts and results achieved in reducing deforestation, the world would contribute or would be able to also contribute and also be engaged in the deforestation efforts in addition to what Brazil have been doing. So the concept of the Amazon Fund is payment for performance, which means the deforestation rate reduction is converted to CO2 equivalent, carbon dioxide equivalent, and this carbon dioxide equivalent is valued by $5, which is a conservative valuation of the carbon dioxide avoided to the nature, and then it is transformed to how much would be the fundraising limit based on Brazil contribution with its own effort that would lead to performance payment from other partners in other countries. So up to now, just to give you that information, we would be willing to receive up to $16 billion of donations based on the deforestation reduction in efforts we have already shown and in the past year. So today, as you said in the beginning, we reduced deforestation by 82%. So that reduction converted and transformed in a value amount is equivalent to $16.2 billion.
So the amount of deforestation that Brazil has reduced at $5 a ton of carbon dioxide is worth $16.2 billion to the world.
Exactly.
Norway has contributed $1 billion. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to understand is how important was it? Because Brazil was already doing this. Mm-hmm. Why was it important to have Norway involved? What did that international support mean for Brazil's efforts?
Yes, I think this is a very good question because is it a Brazil problem or a climate change or it's a world problem? Brazil understands it is its problem, so that's why we have the biggest rainforest in the world. Mm-hmm. So we understood the importance of conserving the forest, not only to us, but also to climate change, to world climate change. But climate change it's beyond a Brazil problem, it's a world problem. So the message and the engagement of in rich countries is very important. So I think this is one thing. The other thing is the results already achieved with this cooperation. So the logic of the Amazon Fund and also under the negotiations of REDD+, one of the premises is country ownership. So the country shows results and it can use the resources based on its strategy of reducing carbon emissions. And Brazil has decided to reinvest the donations received in further reducing deforestation, in projects that would be linked to prevent or combating deforestation. So the logic, the concept of the Amazon Fund is to apply the resources in other projects that are additional to the efforts that we've been doing with all the policies that are being implemented and enforcement of the laws to keep the deforestation rates low.
You talked about the importance of bringing rich and developing countries together to understand this as a global problem with global solutions. You talked about the importance of country ownership. Brazil had country ownership of its deforestation reduction plans. Even though there was international support. Now, CGD's just released this report, Look to the Forests, How Performance Payments Can Slow Climate Change. It's on our website now. It's exactly about this, payment for performance for verified reductions in deforestation. One of its main recommendations is that donor countries should get away from the idea of these payments as aid. Stop aidifying the payments. That's how Nancy Birdsall, our president, would put it. Stop aidifying the payments, the report says. Instead, think of it as a payment for a delivered service. Just as you would pay for your electricity as a utility, think of the forest as providing a utility in terms of development services and climate services. How feasible, given your experience, how practical politically is it to expect donor countries to stop thinking of this as aid, to give up on having conditions or wanting plans in place and not tell you how to use the money?
Yes, I think firstly is to change the mindset that it's a problem of the forest country and thinking about climate change as a world issue. So I think this is the first step. And I think this is a maturity process. For example, after Norway has pledged a donation to the Amazon Fund, it brought in a sequence a pledge and a donation from the Germany government through the KfW. Actually, recently, after the first donation that we have already internalized of about $27 million, recently Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, was there in Brazil in an official visit, and she announced an additional a pledge of 100 million euros. It's the changing of mindset that it is not aid. I'm not only helping a developing country to in the help essence. What I'm doing is that I'm recognizing efforts and results achieved, and I'm paying for that. So that's the mindset change.
But do enough countries understand that? I understand it. You understand it.
Yes,
Norway understands it.
yes.
Germans understand it. Do enough countries?
The countries are represented in the United Nations, and the UNFCCC has established in Warsaw the RED Plus framework was almost finished in Bonn with the last adjustments, and the concept of RED Plus and payment for performance was agreed between the countries.
Yeah, but it hasn't really been scaled up.
It hasn't been
That's
scaled
again what
up.
this
That's
report
why,
talks
yes,
about,
that's
yeah.
what the report talks.
So
and
that suggests that countries do not agree with that idea of payment as a service.
I understand the agreement is there, the commitment in the rules or in the framework of RED is established. What we need now is financial engagement. Basically, where's the money? So what the question is, where's the money? We need now the financial engagement because the framework we've already agreed.
Are you optimistic about the future of the Amazon, about the future of the planet?
Well, I'm always optimist. I tend to be optimist, and I think we've been done a lot. We not only as a country, but also in the Amazon Fund. The results achieved are remarkable. And I think to the world it's possible if we have commitment and if we have incorporated the understanding that climate change is a global problem and that we can do a lot together to change and to keep the climate balance.
Juliana Santiago, been really interesting to talk with you. Thank you for bringing your optimism to the CGD podcast.
Thank you. It was very nice to be here and hope to be here more times.
We hope so too. You can find out much more about our work on our website, cgdev.org. The report that's just come out, Look to the Forests, is also on the website. Take a look at that if you'd like to. And as ever, join me, Rajesh Merchandani, for the next podcast from the Centre for Global Development.